We begin with the breaking news of the day, typically a model of stability. The Ravens are making a massive change, firing head coach John Harbaugh. His tenure lasted 18 seasons, included a Super Bowl, 4 conference championship appearances, 6 AFC North titles, and 12 playoff bids. But missing the postseason this year may have been the last bit of heartbreak the relationship could not stand. Okay, so to try to make sense of this bit of bedlam in Baltimore, NFL insider Adam Schefter joins us here now. It was a will they or won't they for about 48 hours after that heartbreaking loss to Pittsburgh for the Ravens. What made them go with they will end up moving on from John Harbaugh?
I think there was a sense around the league that this always could happen, no matter what happened Sunday night in Pittsburgh. But the fact that Baltimore lost and had its season ended that night expedited conversations between the Ravens head coach John Harbaugh and the Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti. And ultimately, Steve Bisciotti was ready for his organization to go a different direction. Sometimes after 18 years together, nobody's done anything wrong. It's just that they want to try something different. And that looks like it was the case in this particular situation. Look, there's going to be a ton of interest in John Harbaugh. We'll get to that, but the Baltimore Ravens came close a few years ago. Zay Flowers had a fumble at the goal line in the AFC Championship game. They came close last year. Mark Andrews dropped the 2-point conversion. They came close again this year. Tyler Lute missed the field goal that would have won the division at the end of regulation. There are only so many close calls that you can have before you decide that you want to try something different. That's what Baltimore did, and now each side gets to go its own way.
Yeah, there's certainly a fine line between continuity and complacency. They certainly didn't want to fall in the latter category. Now, you mentioned what could be next for John Harbaugh. What are you hearing as far as where he could land?
Well, let's say this. According to his agent, Brian Harlan, within 45 minutes after John Harbaugh was fired, 7 teams reached out to him about seeing if John Harbaugh would be interested in becoming that team's particular head coach. Now let's do the math here. There are currently 7 NFL teams with head coach openings, including the Baltimore Ravens. That means that there was at least one, and my understanding it's more, teams that have current sitting, acting head coaches that reached out to John Harbaugh's agent, Brian Harlan, to see if John Harbaugh would be interested in going to that city. So what we can take away from that right there is, obviously, there are teams with openings like the New York Giants that would be very interested in John Harbaugh. But there also are teams out there with current sitting acting head coaches who are saying to themselves and asking themselves, are we better off with our current head coach or with a coaching free agent like John Harbaugh? The issue is that John Harbaugh is a coaching free agent. The team doesn't get to choose him. He gets to choose where he wants to go because there are going to be multiple teams interested in hiring John Harbaugh here.
It doesn't feel like coveted quite encapsulates just how wanted a guy like John Harbaugh will be for any organization across the league. Now, speaking of Baltimore and just where they go from here, what are you hearing as far as what next steps could be for that organization?
Well, this is a new time for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, their owner, Steve Bisciotti, has not hired a head coach in nearly 2 decades. The general manager, Eric DeCosta, has not been a part of a process to hire a head coach. So this is new, really, for everybody involved. You would think that they have connections to certain coaches. They once had Mike McDonald in their building before he left and eventually became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, who have the NFC's #1 seed. Well, they also had in their building Jesse Minter, who has gone on to become the defensive coordinator of the Chargers. He would figure to be on the Ravens' list of candidates, as would the Dolphins' defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, who also spent time in the Baltimore organization. There are going to be a lot of coaches that the Baltimore Ravens are interested in. The Baltimore Ravens are left to figure out where they want to go next, and John Harbaugh is left figuring out where he wants to go next.
Just like their division rival that beat them for a spot in the postseason, the Ravens have an identity, partly in due to the fact that Harbaugh had been there for 18 seasons, but we'll see if they can reestablish that with someone that has been there or from outside. Shefty, we appreciate it as always, sir.
Stunning NFL news. John Harbaugh has been fired by the Baltimore Ravens. He led the team for 18 seasons, was the second longest active tenured coach in the league behind Mike Tomlin, and turned in the 12th most wins in NFL history and a Super Bowl title for Baltimore in 2012. Signed a 3-year extension just last offseason, but now he becomes the hottest name in this head coaching cycle. The Ravens won 61% of its games since John Harbaugh took over as head coach in 2008. That's the 4th best record in the NFL over that span. Plus, Harbaugh won a playoff game in each of his first 5 seasons in Baltimore, tied for the most consecutive seasons with a playoff win to start a career in NFL history. And now he is out, and Louis Riddick is in for us, joining us on SportsCenter. Louis, the Ravens parting ways with John Harbaugh. Just a shocker.
Wow, first and foremost. I've known John for a very long time. Going back 30-plus years. You know, he was an assistant at the University of Pittsburgh in the late 80s when I was there, along with his father, Jack. So I've known him a long, long time. And this is a guy who has had a tremendous run, who's coached some great football teams, some great players, developed some great coaches who have gone on to other places and had great success, Mike McDonald being the most recent one. You better consider what's your next best alternative. And I'm sure they've considered that. I think the winds of change are going to start blowing really, really hard if they're not blowing like super hard already.
Wow, imagine that for a team that's been this great for this long. As for Harbaugh, he's obviously in the mix for other head coaching vacancies around the league. Where do you see him landing in 2026?
Wherever he wants, to be quite honest with you. Whatever place he wants to go to that he feels as though he can set up the infrastructure around him to mirror, I don't want to say necessarily exactly what he had in Baltimore, but obviously when you're at a place for 18 years, I think you have a pretty good idea of what you think it takes to win. You obviously need a quarterback. I think of all the jobs that are open right now, a lot of people are going to point to the New York Giants because of what Jackson Dart showed you in 2025. You could say, look, whoever you want to stay will stay, and whoever you would want to go will go. I'm sure he would let that be known, and the Giants and any other football team would grant his wishes. Look, he understands how to build programs. He understands how to build staffs. He understands how to help select players, and he understands, most importantly, how to coach. And if you listen to the reports already that are kind of trickling around about the fact that every single team that has a coaching vacancy, and maybe even 1 or 2 that don't have coaching vacancies, have already reached out to him, hey, I think that right there is proof of what people around the league feel about John Harbaugh and what his reputation is.
Yeah, you talk about all the things he can do. He can also build MVPs, helped build 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. Now he's left without the only coach he's ever known in the NFL. Who do you see as the best fit to lead the Ravens next season?
Look, there's going to be plenty who would say, heck yeah, I'll coach Lamar Jackson. I'll continue to try and build a program around Lamar Jackson. And Eric DeCosta, the general manager, is still there, and so is Steve Bisciotti. So it's not like everything is lost, but I don't really know who would fit right now. And that's something that we have to give a lot of thought, because this is a unique place that has been trying to get to the mountaintop and get over it and crest that hill, and they haven't been able to do it. It's going to take a special person to come in there and see if they can kind of help them reach the mountaintop.
Yeah, the winds of change blowing through Baltimore. Just can't believe it. Louis Riddick, thanks.
Biggest and breaking news of the day coming from the NFL. John Harbaugh was the latest in a litany of coaches fired by their team. The Ravens elected to move on after 18 seasons of Harbaugh at the helm. However, the Super Bowl winning coach isn't kicking and screaming on the way out, according to our Jamison Hensley.
Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti said it was his decision to fire John Harbaugh, but I was told Harbaugh agreed with that move. A source close to Harbaugh told me John's at peace with that decision. It's best for all parties involved. It was time for a reset. The source also added, it's not a coincidence that Harbaugh's dismissal comes at a time when the Ravens are trying to get a new deal done with quarterback Lamar Jackson. After that season-ending loss in Pittsburgh, I asked Jackson, does he want Harbaugh to remain his head coach? Jackson declined to give a vote of confidence, saying he was still dealing with the process of losing. The Ravens now begin their process of trying to find their 4th head coach in their 31-year history. Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti once told me he has made a career in business in making the right hire. Now he'll try to do that again when he finds Harbaugh's successor.
Before we move on, let's revisit the resume for John Harbaugh. 18 seasons in Baltimore. There was not a bigger moment than Harbaugh leading the Ravens to Super Bowl 47, where Baltimore beat Jim and the Niners, Harbaugh's little brother, to win their second Super Bowl in franchise history. Then in 2018, the Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson with the last pick in the first round of the draft. Harbaugh and Jackson went on to win 71% of their games in the regular season, the fifth highest winning percentage among a head coach and starting quarterback duo. Plus, Harbaugh was the second longest tenured head coach with the franchise at 18 years prior to today's news. Harbaugh's 193 wins with the Ravens are the eighth most in a single franchise in NFL history. This season was just the Ravens' third losing season under Harbaugh.
A missed field goal prevented the Ravens from winning the AFC North and a spot in the playoffs. Team announced they were firing head coach John Harbaugh after 18 seasons. They were the preseason betting co-favorites to win the Super Bowl. At 8-9, they finished with a losing record for just the third time under Harbaugh. Breakups aren't ever mutual, but I do believe this is a rare example where mutual respect and appreciation frame almost 20 years together coming to an end. Harbaugh has been excellent. The Ravens have been excellent. Organizational continuity is a big part of what I admire about Baltimore, but they have endured a bunch of excruciating defeats lately to end seasons, including 16 blown leads in the final 5 minutes of games in the last 5 seasons alone. The very best teams just don't do that. Is it Harbaugh's fault that they fumbled in Cincinnati on the goal line in the playoffs, or on the goal line against Kansas City in the playoffs yet again, or dropped a pass again in the playoffs against Buffalo, or missed a field goal against Pittsburgh to miss the playoffs? No, it's not his fault, but voices and messages can grow tired over time. Maybe the Ravens benefit from a new one, while there will be a long line of teams hoping to hear Harbaugh's voice and message. So perhaps, after a long, successful run together, if nothing else, this could prove to be mutually beneficial. Insider Adam Schefter. Adam, you and I in New York City on Saturday, where we were for a special edition of Countdown, talked off the air about this very possibility. And then Sunday with Greeny on Countdown, you illuminated a little bit more that this was a possibility, but that was the possibility. It's now a reality. How'd we get from there to here?
It just felt like it was time. Just like we see businesses after a long period of time change out the CEO sometimes, Scott. I think in this particular case, after 18 years, Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti was ready to move in a different direction. I think they ended their relationship peacefully. It certainly seemed like that. Both made statements to that effect, but it seemed like Steve Bisciotti wanted to take this organization, which has fallen short in recent years, in a different direction. There was the loss in the AFC Championship game, where Zay Flowers dropped the ball as he was crossing the goal line. There was the Mark Andrews two-point conversion drop in Buffalo. There was the missed Tyler Luke field goal on Sunday night. They just couldn't get it across the finish line. It didn't mean that anybody did anything wrong. It just feels like the Ravens felt like they needed to do something to move forward and advance this particular franchise in the future.
And their decision to go in a different direction means the rest of the National Football League now has a possibility that wasn't there when the day began. You tweeted something to the effect that Brian Harlan, his agent, said 7 teams have reached out. Adam, I'm doing the math on that, and explain why that math is significant, that 7 teams would have inquired about the availability of John Harbaugh.
Well, first of all, Scott, it was 7 teams within the first 45 minutes after he was fired. By now, it might be 14 teams. It might be 25 teams, for all we know. But to go back to the initial math, there currently are 7 NFL head coach openings, including Baltimore, the one that just fired him. That means that at least one team that has a sitting head coach called to see if John Harbaugh would be interested in coming to that particular city. And Scott, to be honest here, it was more than one with the sitting coach. It was at least 2. And I think this is as big a coaching change as it was when New England moved on with Bill Belichick. And I think when that happens, there are teams that have to ask themselves, do we believe more in the current coach that we have, or are we better off moving in a different direction with somebody like John Harbaugh? But here's the way it goes. The teams don't get to pick. Yeah. John Harbaugh is the coaching free agent here. He gets to pick where he wants to go. When the Denver Broncos signed Sean Payton, they surrendered first and second round draft picks. Now there is another coach of Sean Payton's caliber in John Harbaugh, and you don't have to pay the Baltimore Ravens a first and second round pick you can just sign John Harbaugh. And that's assuming if you can sign him, because there's going to be that much interest and it's going to have that much of a dramatic effect on the head coaching cycle.
Adam, our director, is a Giant fan, and he was asking me if they should go this way or that way, and one of the ways was Harbaugh, and I said, you're implying that you get to pick. As you say so correctly, John Harbaugh gets to pick, and it seems that he'll have carte blanche to perhaps hit the reset button on an entire organization. Fascinating development that you and I discussed a possibility, and now here it is, and as the news breaks, we'll be looking for your feed to share that news with us, Adam. Thanks so much for the time, as always.
Before I go, Scott, I didn't realize that my father, who texted me about the Giants, might have been producing your show because he wants the Giants to get John Harbaugh, too.
Every G-Man fan, every fan of the G-Man is saying the same thing. You don't get to pick, though, folks. You don't get to pick. John does. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Scott.